Welcome to Fridays at Noon. My name is Greg Geeson. I'm the manager of people development, and today we're joined by Dr. Chad King, sustainability coordinator here at the University of Denver. And today we are completing our series on sustainability with a topic that probably draws the most question and confusion on campus, which is how does waste work? So Chad, I don't even know where to start, but it's confusing because all over campus there's signs, there's bins that are black, they're blue, they're green. Why should we care about this?
It's a good question. Why should we care? A lot of people say, it doesn't make any sense and how does it work? But really, if you think about where all this material ends up, we are the state for mountains, right? We'd like to be known for snow-capped mountains, not mountains of trash. So the more we can divert out of our landfills or reduce from going to our landfills, the less landfill space we need taking up space in our, what we feel like is a pretty beautiful state. We can also, as we divert those materials, it keeps us from having to pull out new materials out of the earth or produce new materials. So like petroleum-based plastics, we can not have to mine or drill for as much plastic. Same with metal. If we can recycle that, we don't need to have these big open pits or not as many of them digging new material. We also have seen in the recycling industry that it really supports a lot of local jobs too. So there's a lot of people that work in that recycling and waste diversion industry. Sometimes it's a tough time. It's a market-driven industry, so right now it's tough for the recycling to show all kinds of lots of economical benefits, but there are those other environmental, social benefits. And then really, if you look at the bigger picture, our landfills are one of the major contributors of greenhouse gas. So as things get sealed up in a landfill, when a landfill is full or as it's laying there open, material's breaking down, rotting, and it's usually giving off methane, which is a lot worse than carbon dioxide. So it's a lot worse than the gases that we're emitting when we drive around. And so we need to address that. It's something that's hard to measure exactly how much of that carbon dioxide or methane is being released from landfills, but we know it's a large contributor to climate change and global warming as well. So that's some of the bigger issues of why we should care.
Yeah, okay, so that's recycling, but why compost? What's that?
Well, compost is a great complement to recycling, and when we can do it, do you have a compost pile in your backyard?
I used to.
Okay. And then it stunk, right? And then you couldn't keep it going. Here on campus, we don't have a compost pile. I hope you haven't found one. But we ship all of our compost off to a large facility, which breaks it back down through an industrial composting process into soil again. And as someone who studied soils in some of my graduate experience, I came to love soil. It's an amazing thing. Without it, it has such great qualities of treating water and of holding other soil in place, allowing plants to grow. But the rate of soil production is very, very slow, so we need to do what we can to protect that. So if we can be producing compost, applying it to agricultural areas, other areas, we can keep building that soil. And really it's avoiding just having things come outside of a natural ecological cycle. So just like a tree in the forest falls and it turns back into the soil, a lot of the materials we use, we can turn back into soil and complete that cycle rather than packaging them up into a landfill where they're going to break down slowly and give off methane.
Yeah. So you have to look at the whole picture, and that needs to be included in this process as well. So, all right, well, let's get to the obvious questions of these bins.
Yes.
And there's 3 different color bins.
Right.
Let's start with the blue bin. Walk us through, what is the blue bin?
So the blue bin is for recycling, and you should see signs that look something like this associated with your blue bins. And we've tried to be as clear as we can that most people know cans, bottles, and clear cups we're saying should go into there, as well as we didn't get so specific, but clearly cardboard, paper, everything else. But blue is the international color for recycling. The city of Denver just had to be a little difficult, and they've made everything purple for recycling. So they try to confuse the matter a little bit more. But on campus, anywhere you see blue, that's recycling. You should look for the little recycling symbol, and we can get more into some of the details because it is kind of still a little complicated.
I really like the pictures.
We found pictures to help. No one wants to walk up to a trash can and read a bunch of words. It builds social pressure.
Well, people are watching you.
They're all watching you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the blue. The green one,
okay.
If we look at that just briefly, and then we'll get into more details. But the green one, you should see something like this, which is the compost. It's, again, the international color for compost. And really, as we've addressed here, it's all food and fiber. So stuff that you can tear that's not coated can all go into that. You could put in your, any little stir sticks, wood products, napkins, Kleenexes, all kinds of stuff can go into the compost. So you may see that in different areas, like in the library in Anderson, in the restrooms, because you can compost your paper towels as well.
Yeah, that's easy for you to say.
Very easy.
All right, so what about the black bin?
So the black bin, we've tried to label as much as we can as landfill, because that's where it's going. Hopefully it makes you think twice. But there's really not much left then to go into landfill. It's wrappers, plastic bags, most types of styrofoam. But we really emphasize that when in doubt, you should probably try to throw it out instead of putting it into recycling or compost, because you might just screw up the other streams and mess them up, and that doesn't help the people that are recycling or composting.
Yes. So when you say when in doubt, go to the landfill, and because it takes extra time and effort, and people have to actually go through.
Right. There are certain things that will actually totally clog up the process in recycling or in composting. And you can imagine a couple. If compost is getting turned back into the soil, it really stinks to put compost in your garden that's full of glass. To cut to the point, it's not a good thing to have in there. So any glass in compost can really gum things up. In recycling, any plastic bags that go in there, when they get through the sorting process, they gum up the machines and they have to stop the process. And really, if you've ever been to a recycling plant, have you toured one lately?
No, I haven't.
It's a great experience. You should. It's a little loud, but there are some local companies you can tour. There's actually up to a dozen people on a line hand sorting stuff out as they see it coming down the conveyor belt before it gets sorted out into a more mechanical process. So it reduces the workload on them if you don't screw it up by just deciding that you're going to throw it all into recycling. And if the load is really contaminated, they throw it away because they can't sort through all of that. So we need to be good on our end so that it can actually get recycled.
Yeah, okay. Well, here's the weird thing is I see this truck come by. Right. It looks like they're throwing it all in the same place, and then I start questioning, are they really recycling that?
And this question comes up all the time, especially if you live in the city of Denver, the trucks look the same as they come by your house. They have the same pickup mechanism, but they really are recycling. They really are taking it to compost, unless, like I said, the load is just too contaminated with other materials. So they do have a pretty good process of they use the trucks for different things on different days. And then they are taking it all to their sort of one facility where there's a landfill and there's a sorting area and there's a compost area. So it's going to the same sort of place but getting sorted out when it gets there. Okay. They are taking it, I promise.
All right. So now you mentioned that cups and cutlery at catering events can be composted. And it's funny you say that because, when I had a compost, put a cup there, and I think it's still there. So how does that actually work?
So I did this too, and I got very excited. I get excited about trash sometimes.
Yeah, I could tell.
So I got very excited a few years ago when Sun Chips came out with a compostable bag, and I did the same thing. I put it in my compost pile, and I turned it religiously. And after about a year, that compostable bag still looked like a chip bag.
Yeah.
And the real difference is that this stuff is made to break down in industrial composting. So that means they take it off to an area where it's huge piles of compost, usually 3 or 4 feet high, that they're turning every day or every couple days. And as they turn it, they get the right mix of nitrogen and carbon going so that the bacteria can break it down. And bacteria actually heat up that whole pile. So you'll see that pile steaming hot. It gets up to 150, 180 degrees. And at that temperature, some of those industrial compostable materials start to break down. So this is why when you go to any of our great compostable only catering events and you pick up your clear looking cup that says compostable on it. If you take that and put it in your car on a summer day, that'll heat up and start breaking down, and before you know it, you'll have a puddle. So this stuff is made to industrially compost, not in your backyard. And even then, there are some problems. Some of the industrial composters say it takes a lot longer than it should. But all of those things that say compostable, they've been proven to break down into soil in the ideal condition. Your backyard must not be the ideal condition.
You know, as you were talking, I'm like, I don't recall seeing compostable on there. That would be really helpful?
Sometimes you really need to look. But if it doesn't say compostable, it's not. So for instance, I was at, great, like I said, compostable only catering event, and I picked up this nice fork.
It says that on there?
So this fork, it doesn't look very, it looks like any standard fork. But if you look on the back, and you've got it kind of tilted, and you can see right in the middle there, it says commercially compostable only. So if it doesn't say that on it, it's probably not compostable. So you do, if you look at it, and then the other thing that you're looking for is this symbol, and I'll just put this up here one more time. But this symbol right about here is the symbol for compostable. Little tree, little arrow. So if it has that on, it's been tested to be compostable.
Oh, a little tree, a little arrow?
Little tree, a little arrow, little leaf.
I can't even tell that's a tree or an arrow.
Designers might need some help.
All right. So, it's starting to make sense, but I still think it's awfully confusing.
There's a lot of different materials.
And I know we're going to do a test, but those pictures are really useful, but I don't see them on a lot of the bins.
Well, we're trying, Greg. We're really trying to get it out there. It's hard. You'd be amazed at how many people care a lot about their bins.
All right. So is there any... Are we going to do a test or something?
Sure. Let's test you out and see with what we've talked about so far.
Can I have the pictures?
Here, I'll lay the pictures out in front of you for you. Okay. So we've already talked about our fork, right? So you know where that one goes, right?
Yeah, the fork's because it says.
Because it says
it's compostable.
It's compostable.
Yeah.
So I'll let you share in some of my lunch.
Okay.
We've got a nice little cherry here. Where would that go?
A cherry, and again, I'm looking at the pictures. It would be compostable.
It definitely is compostable. Yeah. You're 2 for 2. That's pretty good.
The photos are helping.
Okay. So if we got a stir stick, this is an all-wood stir stick.
Well, all right. You had mentioned that before. Is it compostable?
It is.
Oh, okay.
See, you're a natural. Let's get a little trickier. So a plate that would come from maybe a catering event?
A plate, again, I'm using the pictures. It would be the recycling, right?
Oh, now plates get a little tricky, and if you, yeah?
Compostable?
Compostable is where this one should go. And you can kind of feel some plates are lined. This one doesn't have a liner on it. It's like pretty much just a paper plate, so it could be composted. And the other great thing that what we've tried to do at all the cafes and at different catering events is make sure that the plates are compostable, because once you put food on it, then it's going to be contaminated.
Okay.
If that was recyclable and you had food on it, then now you've got to wash your plate before you recycle it, and that's no one wants to do that. So you can just toss the whole thing with the food right into the compost.
Okay, now before you go on, I'm noticing that in the landfill and the compost, they both have a cup coffee.
They do. So here again, the coffee cups are the worst. This is why everyone should get a reusable, because we didn't even get there, but when we usually talk about recycling, right, the first thing we say is reduce, reuse, and then recycle. So if we can reduce our total waste before we even start, it's even better. If we can reuse it again and again, like something like this, it's even better. If we have no other options, then we have to recycle it. So the problem that comes with coffee cups is that unless it says compostable on it, and if you go to a Sodexo cafe around campus, it will be a compostable coffee cup, and so that can go, and it should have a compostable lid. It would say that on it, and
Okay.
it could go in the compost. If you go to a Starbucks, for example, those cups are lined with a petroleum-based liner to keep them waterproof and to make them they're a little thicker to be little bit heat resistant. So those are landfill only. Anywhere you go, even Pilates. I've talked to the owner of Pilates. I love Pilates, little shameless plug. But because they don't have compostable at their facility, he's not going to pay the extra for a compostable cup. So he's buying a regular cup. And so any place you go to get coffee, it's going to be a landfill cup. It will usually have a recyclable lid, And then it will usually have a cardboard sleeve that could be
Right.
recycled or composted. So coffee cups are the worst. Just get your own.
If it's a landfill, does it have a? There's no landfill mark.
No, there is no landfill mark.
Okay.
And to further complicate the matters, a lot of what we see in sustainability efforts is sort of a greenwashing effect. So people try to make things seem more sustainable because then maybe you'll be more excited about buying them. So some products might say biodegradable on them, which in our case means it's still landfill because everything will biodegrade eventually. But if it doesn't say compostable, it's not compostable.
All right, so let's do a few more.
A few more. So again, I mean, I know from here on out you're only going to use a reusable bottle, but someone else in their office clearly had a water bottle. So what would you do with the water bottle after you drank
That
the
would
water?
be recyclable.
That's good. And most
There's a
people.
picture that had it.
It's got a water. So sometimes things get confusing even more. So I found this laying around today. It's one of these air cushions for packing. I'd try to pop it, but apparently it's designed to not pop. And it says on it, reduce, reuse, recycle. It has a little recycling symbol.
Yeah.
Number 4, LDPE. What would you do with that?
Well, I would just assume it's recyclable because it's got the picture on it.
Yeah, someone else thought that too because it was in the recycling. But really our recycler isn't able to take this sort of film plastic. It's much like a bag. So this would not be recyclable on campus. And that raises an interesting point, is it says recyclable, but that all really varies depending on where you are. So recycling is only as good as the end markets. So you're hoping that when you recycle this plastic bottle, it's going to become another plastic bottle, which implies that somewhere close to you, someone can turn that back into plastic. Maybe it turns into a jacket. Maybe it turns into a commencement gown. I think all of ours are made out of plastic bottles too. But if nobody's available or no company can break that down and turn it back into a product, then we can't recycle it, even if it could be recycled elsewhere. So if you're from the Midwest, there are more things that can be recycled. There's more industry there. Here it's a little bit harder. So a company making a product labels it as recyclable because somewhere it is. But then you've got to read the fine print for your company.
See, that's.
See, it's complicated.
What about this? Is a cheese
A cheese wrapper.
Where is that? Oh yeah, I'm asking you.
Don't ask me. You're taking the quiz.
I'm guessing it would be landfill.
It would be a landfill product, much like any other wrapper, like a candy wrapper. There are ways to recycle these again, but we don't have that type of collection on campus, so it has to go. It would be a specialty recycling, so we have to landfill it here.
All right, so let me just ask you about some of these things. Turn the table a little
Okay.
bit. Okay.
I'm ready.
The grocery store, those grocery plastic bags.
Yes. Those are recyclable, but only if you take them to a place that recycles them. So we used to collect them on campus, and then we'd take them to a grocery store to recycle them. So now we've quit doing that because, like you mentioned, you see them at the grocery store. You probably go to the grocery store, so we encourage you to take that back to the grocery store and recycle them there.
Okay. What about printer cartridges?
I get a lot of questions about printer cartridges, and they actually are recyclable. And the great thing on campus now is that our Staples, our office provider, our office supplies provider, is able to take them back. So if you have a printer with cartridges in your office, once those are empty, you can just put them in a box and keep them near where Staples comes for their deliveries, and tell them to take it when they come. They'll take it and recycle it, and usually turn it back into another printer cartridge.
Kind of related to that, in the Anderson Academic Commons.
Yes.
They have some recycling right in that front. Do those change? Because I thought there were printer cartridges at one point.
They were, until I realized that, again, my office collects those, and then we've found the places that they should go. But it's become so easy with Staples that you can just ship it right back to them. You can go to their website and print out a shipping label if you want to ship it instead of having them pick it up. So there's multiple ways to get it back to Staples for free for them to recycle. So we do still collect batteries in that station in front of Anderson.
Okay.
And then we ship them off to a place that will recycle them.
Okay. What about pizza boxes?
Pizza boxes get a little confusing sometimes because they're cardboard and you can recycle cardboard, right? But we all know that pizzas often gets that nice greasy soak going on.
Right.
And so once it's been contaminated by grease, it's contaminated by food, so now it becomes compost. So that's why in the Anderson, as you leave the building, there's 2 bins for cardboard boxes so they can be composted instead of recycled.
Well, I've been doing that wrong.
If you've got a really clean pizza box and it's not oil soaked, then you can recycle.
Okay. What? Now here's one that I know is an irritant for many people, which is K-cups.
K-cups are an irritant for me. I'm one of those people. But there are ways to recycle that. Again, Anderson Academic Commons has been leading the way on some of this recycling work. And they have actually set up a recycling program where they're shipping it back to the company. So they collect them, ship them back, they get shredded out, composted, and recycled. So if you want to set that up in your office, you're welcome to. You just need to look and contact the K-Cup company and pay a little bit for your unit to do that.
Oh, but we'd have to do it ourselves.
That is correct.
Couldn't take it to Anderson.
Anderson doesn't want it. They're doing their own, not yours.
Well, at least that's better because I tried the the plastic one that you just use yourself. You put coffee in it, and then and it gets messy, and there's it's a lot of work.
I'm telling you, just get your own cup. Walk down to the cafe.
Okay, what about computers?
Computers want any electronic waste have become a huge issue lately. And you see it come up in the news every now and again where these companies go bankrupt because they said they were recycling it, but they're not, and they've got piles of electric waste sitting around. It's really hard to recycle. For a while, it was getting e-waste was getting shipped to developing countries, and you saw these awful images of mothers and children sorting through and trying to pull out the copper from the wires and all of this. So there's a lot of laws that have come up around electronic recycling. It's gotten more expensive too because of that. There's not a lot of places that recycle it. So for any e-waste that you have on campus, it could be keyboards, your mouse, your speaker, your camera, any of that stuff. You can just box that up and put in a work order, and custodial will come and pick that up and take it to. We have a contract with the recycling company that recycles all of that, and they will take it away. And you will get charged for some of the equipment. So for certain monitors, you'll get up to a $10 charge. If you'd have one of those old TVs, they're closer to $25 for the big tube TVs. But it just reflects the cost of actually being responsible in our recycling of that. So that's just a work order. They'll come and get it.
So you have obviously students are very involved in this process as well. So what if a student said to you, his apartment complex, nobody's recycling. He wants to do it, but the only way it's going to happen is if he brings it over to DU.
I've had this happen once or twice, surprisingly. And the issue really becomes in Denver, the city of Denver will collect from any household up to 7 units. Over 7 units, it's the responsibility of the landlord to get a recycler to take it away. So just like it would be for them, it costs DU money to do this recycling. So unfortunately, we don't have an unlimited budget to recycle and compost everybody's materials from their houses. We're here to take care of our campus waste, and then that becomes a conversation with the real estate manager or company for those apartments. But increasingly, the city's trying to do better. And just to give a few numbers, I like numbers as a science guy. The city of Denver is only currently recycling about 17%, or diverting from the landfill, recycling and composting about 17% of all our waste. Citywide or nationwide, cities average 34% diversion or from the landfill, so to recycling or composting. On campus, how do you think we're doing?
Probably a lot better.
We would hope so, right? Unfortunately, we're not. We get numbers back from our collectors every year. Last year, we were at about 18% diversion. So we've seen really great success in some buildings. If you've gone to hockey games, you've seen our zero waste hockey games. This year, we were able to get a couple games up to 90% diversion, which is what we're calling zero waste, because that last 10% is pretty hard. So we had a couple games where actually 90% of all the trash generated went to recycling or compost. We had over an 82% diversion average there. we've done waste audits, and you're welcome to come out and join us. We dig through the trash and we weigh out the different stuff in there. And we did an all-day, one day's audit at Anderson, and they were diverting over 60% of their waste from the landfill to recycling and compost. So we need to keep those practices expanding to other buildings to sort of focus on how do we do this properly, how do we set up the right infrastructure, because we need our numbers to get better from that 18 to 20% range. We should be doing much better.
Do you think is part of the solution visibility, like seeing these bins and it being so user-friendly that people will use it more? Is that part of it?
That is part of it. I don't ever advocate for more bins. We have a whole lot of bins on campus, but what we do advocate is for making sure that in any building, the recycling and landfill bins are side by side.
Yeah.
That way, people always have a choice to do the right thing. We also don't necessarily advocate that every building should have a compost bin.
Right.
Compost liners are a special liner. They're made to break down in the land or in the compost, so they cost a whole lot more than other liners. And we don't, we have a few compost dumpsters across campus, but not too many. So we really are focusing our compost efforts on places where we know we're producing food or that people are taking food, and larger quantities of it. But yes, if we can pair the bins, if we have good signage near them, if someone would do some videos about it, all of these things, we could really get more information out.
Yeah. And watch this video.
Exactly. Share it with all your friends.
Yeah, which
it's
is
going viral.
Well, it's part of the Fridays at Noon series, and we also know that in the Colorado 14ers program, that in the sustainability pathway, that there are 3 presentations that are now here on Fridays at noon that people can watch to get credit. And just quickly, what are some of the other things in the 14ers that people should be aware of around the sustainability piece?
Yes, we do have plenty of offerings on different areas since sustainability drifts into so many different areas. So we've got some trainings around food and local food production, as well as what we do here on campus. We have several on transportation because it's a big part of our carbon footprint. Also, there are alternative ways to get here that are healthy and improve wellness and all of that. So we have, I'm trying to think of the others. I should look at our program. Yeah. A lot of different options are out there. And I would say, too, that my office is willing to come talk to any unit if someone wants to know more or wants to do a whole unit sort of training. If they just email sustainability@du.edu, we can help set that up. And do some more hands-on looking at how does this actually work in the office setting.
Yeah, and people that are watching this will obviously see the other 2 videos, but the first one was why sustainability, and that kind of goes through a lot of that, and then what DU is doing, which kind of also talks about what's in here, right? Correct. So we've got all that. Well, any other final thoughts or advice for the people watching this?
Well, the great thing with recycling, with compost, is that this is one way that people can start being involved in sustainability. Sometimes people aren't sure, how do I get engaged? How do I make a difference? Well, that's maybe the first step, because every day somebody is typically throw things away or you're recycling things. So it's a good first physical step, and it can then lead to all kinds of other things that you can do. But it's a great way to get involved. And again, if you need any help, just give us an email and we'll come help.
All right, well, that was Chad King, Sustainability Coordinator. I'm Greg Geeson. Thank you for this series. And it's just the beginning, really. It's not the end of the series, because now we're hoping people will really take advantage of all this. Yep. All right, well, thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll see you next time.